Hello again to all my fellow members of the congregation out there, and welcome to the Gator Tales podcast with Sean Kelley. This is episode number 60. We've reached a bit of a milestone, and it comes at the end of the 2025-26 athletic year. And I'll mark this episode of the podcast as a special one. This episode's guest is Dave Duke Werner, Executive Associate Director of Athletics / Director of Sport. We'll get to that title right off the bat and explain to you what it means, of course, in Duke's own words. But this visit's going to take us through a comprehensive number of topics that the UAA has encountered and has worked through over this last athletic year. Coaching changes, successes, other challenges, leadership change. All of that is in play as we'll have a longer than normal conversation for this format. Duke's background, of course, extends back into the 90s and his history with UAA. He has a unique new job title that will become a part of a unique new approach for Director of Athletics, Scott Strickland. You're going to get candid thoughts here about the 3 coaching searches that were done this past athletic year, what the future holds, and why these changes were important at this time in UAA's history. I think what you'll find out of listening to this podcast is a better understanding of where we're going. Yes, it is a look back on this athletic year, but I think it's a glimpse into the future and may answer a lot of questions that you've had over the last year, 2 years, even 3 or 4 years with regard to where the Florida Gators have been and what's next on the horizon. One word you're going to hear a great deal in this visit: winning. It's at the tip of the tongue of Duke Werner in our visit, but also the tip of the spear for UAA in its history, and maybe more so now than ever before as it moves forward. This will be a macro and micro conversation in a lot of ways. I get that it's a lot to consume in one podcast, but I think it's very, very important. So again, here now, episode 60 with Executive Associate Director of Athletics / Director of Sport, Dave Duke Werner. The Gator Tales podcast with Sean Kelley is presented by UF Health. UF Health has locations throughout Florida, including Gainesville, Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Leesburg, and the Villages, and we're growing. Compassionate care and world-class outcomes. That's our game plan. Visit ufhealth.org to learn more. And now, the podcast designed specifically for the congregation. Dave Werner is the Executive Associate Athletics Director / Director of Sport. That's what the title says on FloridaGators.com. Titles are one thing, what they mean is a whole different thing. And by the way, for the sake of this conversation and for anyone who knows Dave, he goes by Duke. So therefore, Duke, that's how I'll refer to you. It's great to have you here on the Gator Tales podcast. Let's start with that title. It is somewhat new to you. What is the Executive Associate Athletics Director / Director of Sport?
So, Sean, first of all, thanks for having me, man. This is great. I wish we could have recorded the other 200 conversations we've had the last 4 years, and I think people would enjoy that as well. But so I got this job and this title, last fall, September, October-ish. And I think through the new landscape and, to be honest with you, a lot of self-evaluations from the admin level. I think we started looking at where we needed to improve and what we had to do to get better. And I think the big one, and this was all Scott's idea, but I think with what we're having to do now to be successful in college athletics, the role of the athletic director, first of all, has changed. And he is gone from the office a lot, meetings, fundraising, doing everything that he has to do now to try to keep this thing running. And one of the areas I think he's thought that we needed to get a little better at is just an overall eye and communication and relationships with our head coaches. And, this is my 32nd year with UA. 30 of those years, I was in the training room, but I came up through kind of our sports health and performance areas. I think he felt like I had a good idea of how the sports ran. I think thought I had a good idea of the relationship with head coaches and kind of what makes them tick. So he brought me in. We kind of talked about it. So the reality of it is the director of sport. All the head coaches report up through me now, and then obviously Scott's the boss, and it goes to him for the ultimate decisions. But really, day to day, I am working with our head coaches. I'm working with with their staffs, just trying to get to the point where we can be as good as we can be. And I think we've done a lot of good things, so far this year, and I believe it's something we can continue to grow and move forward in the future.
Duke, I remember talking to you back when you took this role on, and you said something to the effect of, just know I'm the director of winning. And I thought it was great because that's the goal here. And with regard to our head coaches, it's all about winning, celebrating winning. How do we get to be winners? How do we sustain being a winning program? In the time that you've gone now between telling me you were going to be the director of winning to now, I know it's a short time, but does the title still stick? And in what ways have you fine-tuned that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing we did was we really sat down and evaluated where all of our programs were. And everyone that follows Gator athletics knows we have, we have some Hall of Famers. We have some head coaches that, and the reality of it is they could be the best at what they do right now in the country. We also felt like there were some areas that we needed to get better at. And I think initially we really dove into some of the areas that we felt like were maybe underachieving at the level that we expect them to do, here at Florida. And I think we really started just really looking into everything that goes around some of our sports that weren't performing as well as we thought. We made some difficult changes with some sports. That's never easy. But the one thing, I'll tell you a story. So I've always been either on the bench, in the dugout, or on the field for games, right? For my entire career. This past season, I sat in the box with Scott. First time I've ever sat in a box in my life to watch games. And I was sitting up there with him watching a football game, and I looked down kind of on the masses of you see this, Sean, where you sit, right? You look down and you see basically 90,000 people, right, cheering their tails off. And whatever game it was, I don't remember. We were not playing well. It was not going in the Gators' way. And I turned to Scott and I said, this is an unbelievable responsibility that we have to these people, because they are, they're saving their money to come to these games. They're spending money. There's no more of a passionate fan base in college athletics. They deserve winners, and they deserve winning across the board. That's the one great thing about Florida, and everyone knows it, is like every sport we have, we want them to win. And after evaluating some areas, there were some spots we weren't just getting it done like we should. So I think that part of some new coaching hires that we made, that we feel good about and we can talk about later. But I really just believe I think everything starts at a self-evaluation of where you're at and where we're at as an association. And I think we got a lot of stuff done in a short period of time to move forward in a successful way.
You kind of just answered my next question, which was basically those fans that you referred to, and there's a mix of alum, there's current students, faculty, staff. There's people who just love the Gators because they represent our community. in some ways, I wanted to ask you, why should they care, or why does it matter to them that we now have you in this role? I think you just answered that, but I want to go back to what you said, Duke, about the changing role of an athletic director in today's landscape and what has to go around him. And certainly when you look at the change in your career and Scott's kind of new vision for how UAA should move forward, what else should we know about this leadership change or this new approach from an administrative level at UAA?
Yeah, good question. And I'm glad you asked, because I think it's a really positive thing that Scott has done. And I think if you talk to our head coaches that we have, they will tell you the same. We really, again, we evaluated on what we needed to get better at, and we needed to figure out how we could get ahead, right? Like a little bit, I feel like we were just kind of maintaining, but who can we bring in and get this thing moving? So to be honest with you, his whole exec team has changed. Like this past year, he's got a whole new team. I kind of talked about my role. Amy Haas, who is our, she's a deputy athletic director. She's kind of charge of all of our administrative departments, as well as she's our SWA, senior women's administrator. But she was the head general counsel for the University of Florida for 17 years. Her ability to navigate through the changing landscape now, because of all the legal components that go into it, has given us an unbelievable edge, I think, in trying to deal and move forward with everything that goes into it now. I'm telling you, she is terrific. And I'm not sure, going through the House settlement, going through some different changes, I don't know where we'd be without her. And she is aggressive. She was a college soccer player. She's just brought a whole new level of something that we haven't had before. Michael Seeley, who is our chief resource officer, he comes from the Denver Nuggets, the Avalanche, the LA Rams. He worked for the Kroenke Group. Some people out there want an ownership group that is probably as good that they have out there right now. He has changed the way we think about obtaining resources. He brings a commercial, like, sponsorship thoughts and ideas to things we've never done. And I laugh at him all the time, because I always joke that, like, you can get Michael, you can get $1 out of a turnip, right? You can make some money, this guy. And we have to be able to do that moving forward to compete. He again, he has been great. And then Kevin Hurley, who is our facilities guy and major projects that we brought in from Texas A&M. He was behind the new football stadium, and at Texas A&M, who many people think is the best out there right now. And he's just done an incredible job of reshaping our thoughts on facilities around our teams. So, the reality of it is I don't think there's a school that's better positioned to move forward in this new landscape than we are right now. And we aren't winning unless we could get ahead. And I think we're getting ahead in that aspect right now.
Is there something that is tangible that leads to that statement, Duke, when you talk about getting ahead? I mean, what has happened in these last 6-7 months that backs up what you're saying, I guess?
Yeah, I think I think the realities of college sports right now is the rev share and the NIL piece is a deal. That's real. And, Coach Summerall had just put something out yesterday, I believe, on, we're in the time right now where we can make some things happen to make for Gator football and all of our sports to be special. I think the deals that Michael's involved with now with court and field naming, rights, jersey patches, different beverage drinks, everything that kind of goes into our fan bases see. He is taking a very professional approach to that piece. And, no one loves college athletics more than me. I've my whole career, it's been about the student athletes, and it's going to continue to be about the student athletes for me. So I don't want to lose that college feel. That's really important. College sports need to stay college sports. But in order for us to win, we want to win, our fans want to win, we have to move into a little bit of a different mindset on how that we're going to go about obtaining resources to move forward. And Michael's, he's just been incredible with that.
Dave, when you talk about your experience, and again, over 30 years with the Gators here, but I'll go back to your minor league baseball days. Obviously, there's some NFL experience in there. There's a tremendous amount of experiences and trials and tribulations along the way that you saw, again, from a bench, a dugout, a sideline. You also have management experience, in your background as well. As you kind of rose as an athletic trainer, you oversaw basically the medical side of things, prior to this. I am curious, though, from a management standpoint, what have you learned here, or how have you applied that to managing all these different sports and all their particular challenges? I mean, there's no one here listening to this podcast that would disagree that the challenges for women's soccer are quite different than, say, men's basketball or football, for that matter, which is its own animal in that sense. How do you tie them all together?
Yeah, Sean, we've been friends, I don't know what, 4 or 5 years now, I think, since you've been here. To me, it always goes back to relational, good relationships, but actually having a relational conversation with people. What people may or may not understand, that we have a real stud in JC Deacon at men's golf. He's a killer. He is as good as anybody in America. That guy works as hard as our football and basketball coach. His players want to win just as bad as Jaden Ball. And I understand that. And I also know that I deal with him exactly the same way I deal with John Summerall, the same way I deal with Jenny Rowland, the same way I deal with Mouse Holloway. Those head coaches, they incredible work ethic. But if you're around, and I go to a lot of practices, to me, the fun of athletics is the process of being great, not just the games, right? You become great in practice, and that's what I enjoy the most. And, if you're around, I see you out at football, or I'll see you at hoops practice, or, I've seen you all over, right? You do the same. You go to practice and want to be a part of that. That's where the fun is. That's where the enjoyment is. That's where everything gets done. And I have a great understanding and respect, I think, for the work that goes into winning. And I've been very fortunate, Sean. I've worked with 5 Hall of Famers in their respective sports. I was on their staff. And so I've been around the best of the best when it comes to coaches. So when you're in staff meetings every day with these guys, and when you're at practice every day, just by listening, you pick up just a wealth of knowledge. And I feel like I have a good idea what goes into winning, and how that works, and how you become winners. And I just think that's one of the things that I think Scott saw when he created this position, that's one piece that I understand, because there's nothing that goes on every day at with any of our teams or any of our facilities that I haven't seen, right? I've been there for all of that. And I think our coaches understand that as well, that I have a real respect for what they do day to day.
I get the impression, Duke, that not only did Scott want you in this position, but he knew full well that you were going to be honest with him. Not that you don't have a filter, but at the same time, I don't think you take the job without saying to Scott, hey, look, I'm going to tell you how I feel about these things. So with that being said, before we get into maybe the individual challenges or the changes that you made, I think globally, I'd be really curious, and maybe our fans would be too, when you stepped into the role here this year, what did you think that we as Gators were doing well with regard to winning, and what things did you initially come in from the dugout, sideline, bench world that you said right away, we need to be better at these things? What kind of a list did you have on both sides?
The first thing I think I talked about, that I wanted people to talk about winning. I wanted that to be the most important thing that we do. You've heard people say it all along. If we don't have coaches and we don't have players, there's no athletic association. So everything in my mind should be about those groups of people. And everything we do administratively and all the people that we put around those teams, it all should go into how does that impact winning. You've heard me say it a lot, and I make every decision I make on, okay, does this impact winning or is this just fluff? And I thought that from the very beginning, it was the first thing I said, that winning has to be the most important thing. That's what we want. That's why we're in this business. And most of all, that's what our fans want. And, I came up in a service industry. Like, I've always been a server. And I've always served players, athletes, coaches. Now I feel like I have a really, really, as I mentioned earlier, I have a real responsibility to our fan base to give them a product, which whatever team that's there, a product that they like, a product that's successful, a product they can be proud of. And there's not a minute goes by every day that I'm not thinking about how to make the Gators better. And there's a lot of variables to that, obviously. But that's my job. That's my job right now. And I take it very seriously. And it's funny that, we all have jobs, growing up. And I consider when I got the job at Florida, it was like my first real job. I got out of grad school and I came here. I've never been anywhere else. This is all I know. And with that being said, this is all I know from 1994, until October of 25. I also know that we had to do some things differently to move forward and to continue to compete where we all want to be. And I just, the winning piece, celebrating winning, we do more things now with when teams win championships to celebrate our coaches and student athletes. Like, we can't take that for granted. And I think a lot of people think just because we suit up and we're the Gators, we're just going to win. Like, that's not how it works. Everybody, when we play Alabama, they want to win too. And, Mississippi State, they want to win. And Arkansas, everybody wants to win. So that's not just a given if you have orange and blue uniforms on. Like, we got to work and we got to work harder. We can't be entitled because of what's happened here in the past. So really, I think I've taken everything I've learned from all the head coaches I've dealt with, knowing that we can't rest on our laurels, knowing that we can't continue to do things the way we've always done them and expect the same. It's just not how it works. So yeah, that's the big one. And then I think I've talked a lot about just the evaluation piece of where we're at, and where we want to be moving forward. And that's brought up a lot of good conversations and changes.
I'm sure it has, both at the administrative level and at the coaching level as well. Let's talk about the athletic year that we're going to conclude here pretty soon. And there are a lot of things to celebrate, and we'll get to those in a moment. But there were also changes that had to be made, and you had challenges as well. Specifically, coaching changes in 3 different programs with soccer, women's basketball, and of course football. Uh, Duke, when you look at those 3 situations, share with us, if you don't mind, what went into why changes were made, what you wanted to do with the opportunity to change, and ultimately what you settled on. Let's start with football. And after 4 years under Billy Napier, you and Scott Strickland made the change and go about hiring John Summerall. What went into the change? What did you find during that process? And maybe more of what you've learned about John Summerall since you guys brought him aboard.
Yeah, I think it's been talked about a lot, Sean. I'm going to go back to what I said. Every team and coaching staff is evaluated daily, and they're all evaluated the same, right? Football's not being evaluated any different than any other sport. It's really hard, and I tell our head coaches this, it's really hard to be a head coach at Florida because we want to do things the right way. We want to treat people the right way. But we also want to win. We want to win, and we want to win championships. So it's hard. We ask our coaches to do both. There are some places that I feel like win, and maybe they sacrifice some things in order to win. We're not going to do that here. So it's sometimes really hard to do both. To be honest with you, we just weren't winning like we wanted to win in football. And I think you could ask any fan, you could ask anyone, you could ask people on our staff. Coach was unbelievable at building some things within that building over there that really checked the box for the one piece of doing things the right way and treating people the right way. But the other side of it, we weren't just getting done. So we made that change, and then moving forward with that search, it was one of the most intense things, if not the most intense thing I've done in my life. I have been a part of 2 basketball searches, but I have not been a part of a football search. And I think Scott and Danny Werfel, it was the 3 of us, they've spoke at length about this. But again, we sometimes you have to make things a little simpler, in my opinion. And we went into that search trying to find the guy that could win at a high level and also do the things that I talked about of treating people the right way, having a great culture, having great student athletes that our fans are proud of. And I think we found that with John. That was Scott and I made the decision when this started that there was never going to be a more thorough head football coaching search than what we're going to go do right now. So we didn't have one guy in mind. We ended up talking to 11 or 12 candidates, right? And it was long, and we spent hours and hours and hours talking about that. But the thing about being thorough is you feel really good of where you come out in the end on who you get. And, I don't know if it will surprise anybody or not, but John Summerall was the first guy we talked to. And he's just, we talked a lot about, okay, can this guy win a national championship? That was our thing. And we felt like with what he's done, how he runs things, I think there's a level of discipline and accountability being a football coach. I think you have to be successful. That is so much harder to do than people think. That's not easy. And John had done that at 2 different levels. And we just felt incredibly confident is the word, with his authenticity, his work ethic, what he had done up to that point. He just rose above the crowd. And again, when I talk about being really thorough, we talk to a lot of good coaches that have become coordinators, that have become NFL head coaches. We've talked to really, really successful head coaches in college football that are still there. And he just continued every time we talked to him to impress us. And I'm so excited moving forward with him and working with him. And I think people know this. Scott definitely knew it. I think I added to the conversation that there is a fit at the University of Florida that's been successful. I think you have to have a personality, like an outgoing personality where fans can get behind. You look at Coach Spurrier, you look at Coach Meyer, Billy Donovan, Todd Golden, Tim Walton. These guys are like there's a personality level that just exudes confidence. And when we started looking at people who were successful at Florida, John Summerall fits that bill. And that's one of the things I can say. I was on Billy Donovan's staff for 12 years. You know, I was around every home game and training camp with Coach Spurrier. I was around with Coach Meyer. Like I saw those guys, how they work day to day, not just in an interview process or a post-game media conference, right? Like I know how those guys thought and what they did to become great. And I think John Summerall fits that.
I love the fact that at our age, our student athletes can help Duke, you and me stay in touch with their generation. So it was Alex Condon during this past season who taught me about aura and what that means to that generation, which I found to be, obviously entertaining. To use that terminology, it seems like John Summerall has aura, using that generation's language. And you said it was thorough, Duke, but then again, you don't really know until somebody's in our building the whole thing. In the 6 months or so that John Summerall's been with us, has he surprised you in any way? Is there something that you didn't see through the thorough process that's now come to light as you've gotten to know him in our building? He hasn't won a game yet. Don't get me wrong. But there are things that we've learned.
There's not been one thing that I've learned about him that I didn't think I knew.
Really? Okay.
No, it's everything he said he was going to do, he's done. Now, we haven't played a game, so like everybody understands that. But everything he said he was going to do, he has done, which is exactly what Todd Golden did. When the search for Todd Golden, he told us exactly the plan that he was going to follow, and he's done it to the T. There's not one thing that he's done that he didn't say he was going to do. It's incredible. And what John Summerall has done since he's been here with his off-season program, the weight room, what he's done with our fan base, it's exactly what he said he was going to do. Nothing that he's done surprises me. It's what I expected through the interview process with this guy it's exactly what I thought was going to happen so far.
Interesting. What about
Sean? So I talked to people every single step of the way about this guy. I talked to people that were around him as a player. I've talked to every spot that he's been as an assistant. I've talked to every people around him at every place he's been a head coach. The great thing about him is he's so authentic, and everybody has told me the exact same story on this guy. The same story. There's not one person from when he was a player to coaching two teams in the playoffs. He is what he is, and we feel like he's going to be successful here.
Can't wait for the fall in that sense. Can't wait for the fall as well, because we'll get a new look at soccer too, where you've also made a change.
Yep.
Again, to sit here and have a conversation and flip from major Division I college football to women's soccer is quite a different world. But what went into the program change there? And I guess in some ways, help me with the timing here. Was that the precursor? Was that the first change, or did football come first? It blurs together here in some ways.
The football process was first. We had John hired first, and then we hired Nick Zimmerman there. When that was completed, Nick Zimmerman, and it throws me off. Like, I'm a Southern Indiana guy, so soccer is always soccer to me. He calls it football. So we hired two football coaches, and at the same time, basically. Nick Zimmerman is John Summerall. Like, they are his fire, his passion, what he's totally revamped this roster. Like, it's incredible what he's done in a short amount of time. But again, anyone that you talk to that knows Nick Zimmerman, you're going to come away like fired up, right? Excited. And through these different hires we made, that was one of the things we looked for was just an energy and a passion, someone that really wanted to be a Florida Gator. And I think, again, when you start looking back at who's been successful here, those are the people who have done that. And Nick fits that, to a T. He's a great coach, a great person. Those players down there love him. He's put an unbelievable staff together. He's very forward thinking. He's done things that we have never done with that program before that he's instituted. That's been incredible. I think really, really big things are ahead for him in that program.
You also felt there was change needed in women's basketball. And that landscape, Duke, and you and I have talked about this, it is really tricky right now in women's college basketball. There's seemingly more disparity between, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but let's say 5 teams, 5 programs at the elite level of that sport, and then seemingly everybody else. So I would imagine that evaluating that landscape and why or why not you need to make a leadership change is truly unique. Was it that way for you all? And why Tammy Reese?
Yeah, I think, again, when you start evaluating the program, we have not been to the NCAA tournament in 4 years. And just the way that I think and the way that Scott thinks is, it's hard for me to believe at the University of Florida you shouldn't make the NCAA tournament. And now can you have a bad year? You have injuries, you have this, you have that. Yeah, those things happen. But I think after a 4-year absence from the tournament, we just felt like we should be there. And going through that process, again, it was very thorough. We talked to, 6, 7, 8 coaches, even with that. And Tammy just rose above the crowd with her passion and her energy. I actually knew a coach on the men's side when she took over at Rhode Island, and the guy told me what she did there with rebuilding a program that was as bad historically in that league that it was, and for her to turn that around and start winning the league and being coach of the year like she did, it was incredible. And this came from a guy that was working basically beside her in the same building, for quite a few years. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but again, she brings the energy and the passion. She wants to be a Gator. She's going to do this thing the right way. Our kids are going to want to be student athletes. They want to go to class. They're going to work their tails off. She put a staff together that I'm telling you is as good as anywhere in the country. All of them came from winning programs, like winning, not just getting into the tournament, but we've got some assistants that have been parts of great teams. And, I'm excited about all the coaches. I'm really excited about Tammy because I feel like I was in that building for 20 years down there at the practice facility.
Mm-hmm.
and kind of was side by side and know the history of that place. And like she's going to be incredible. I have as much as I love the other guys, I love Tammy Reese just as much. And she has done an incredible job with our fan base and our donors, creating excitement. I've gone down there to watch some of her workouts. They're hard, they're tough, but there's a respect level that she has for those student athletes that they know how much she cares about them as people, which usually means that they're going to outperform their capabilities sometimes, and that's what great coaches do. So again, could not be happier with that hire, and we kind of did this. We kind of started talking about, okay, one of the things we were looking at is, okay, when you see a head coach like walking towards you, and do you want to go shake that coach's hand, give him a hug, have a conversation, or do you like try to take a quick right turn and not have to do that, right? Those people that we brought in, like I want to talk to all of them all day. I can't get enough of talking about their sport with those guys. And I think our fan base will see that. I think the level of student athletes that they will recruit and bring in here will feel the same way. Like everything starts at the top. And when you have that excitement and passion and intensity that those three have, it's either the players will take that on, and that's how they will be, or it won't be a good place for them. So, really, really excited about that group.
Okay, so that's kind of the perfect lead in here, and I'd like to think that I am going to fire away my own 60 minutes hard question for you, Duke. But I'm going to basically ask the question that there's a segment of the fan base that would love to hear you speak to this fact. In the three coaches that you just hired with Scott Strickland, only one has come from another SEC program, or let's call it major Division I level head coaching experience. John Summerall comes from a Group of Five job. Tammy Reese comes from, sorry to label it this way, a mid-major job. What translates when you've made hires like that? What would you want to say to the segment of our fan base that says, we're Florida, why are we hiring from these ranks and seemingly not going for, somebody who's coming from another SEC school like Zimmerman? Or do you understand what they're wondering in that sense? And I'd be very curious to hear what you'd want to say to that and why it translates.
Yeah, I think when it's all said and done, it all comes down to the person. Like you have to find the right person. And I do not agree with that thought. I think people have felt that because of maybe a hire that we've had that didn't work out. I think there's just as many hires that come from D1 programs that don't work out as wherever they come from. Billy Donovan was pretty good, when he got here. He's from Marshall. And Urban Meyer came from Utah, but he was at Bowling Green and then Utah. But people forget Utah wasn't Utah when Coach Meyer got there. I think that's a little bit overblown. I do understand how they're looking at it. And I do get if there's some frustration with that. But, San Francisco, the University of San Francisco had been to one NCAA tournament in, 30 years before Todd took them. He's done pretty good. Everybody loves Todd. Mouse Holloway was a high school coach at Buchholz. And now he's got 14 natties. That's a little bit overblown and it's a little bit misunderstood because at the end of the day, you have to get the right person to lead your program. And, we feel like we've done that. Time will tell, obviously, but it's The thing that I learned the most, and especially during the football hire, that process was I would like to warn our fans and everyone out there about what you read on social media. And there are so many things that are written about, that's stated as facts, that just aren't true. They're just not. And then people start forming narratives around certain people or certain situations that aren't true. So, I ask our fans to get behind our coaches. They are going to work tirelessly to represent our university and our alumni. And again, I just feel really good moving forward. I hope everyone can somehow get to know our new coaches. Like I think everybody has a really good feeling on Tim and Mouse, and Jenny and everyone. I know I'm forgetting people. Solly has been terrific. But just get to know them as people. You'll get excited. You'll get fired up about what they're going to bring. And I think it's a great day to be a Florida Gator.
As we're having this conversation about the 25-26 athletic year, the fact that you had 3 coaching changes may lead some to believe, well, it wasn't that great of a year. I would counter that and say it's actually been a really good year in a lot of ways. There have been a number of successes for the Gators in this athletic year. What are the ones that come to mind for you when you think back now, in that lens, through that lens? What have you found to be most successful about these last, 9 months?
I think the great thing about being an administrator at Florida, that somebody's going to win. We've had some teams that didn't produce to where we all felt like where we should be at, and I think we made the appropriate evaluations and changes to move forward on that. But I also, I think we also forget about, it's not a given that Tim Walton hosts the regional and super regional every single year. He doesn't have this magic dust down there at his facility that he just sprinkles on these players and his staff that we just automatically win. What he's done is incredible. What Solly's done, I don't know, Sean, you may know better than I, but if Vandy doesn't make the NCAA tournament this year, Florida baseball will have the longest streak of postseason play of anyone in the country. That's incredible, the consistency there. I've always felt like in order to win, you gotta be in the arena. And if we can keep getting to the arena of the NCAA tournament, we have chances to win it all. Mouse's women's track team won the indoor SECs. They're competing right now for the outdoor. They have a really good chance of winning that again. Our golf teams, we had the best combined golf rankings in the country with JC and Emily. There's just good things happening, and I think all groups and associations need to have an identity. I think teams need identity. I think coaches need identities. The UAA needed an identity that we could all get behind, and I think that is we've made it our goal and our mission to win the Directors Cup. And for the fans out there who don't know what that is, it's basically an all sports trophy across the country where each team, you earn points on where you finish in the NCAA tournament. So the reality of what it is that we have to have excellence across the board in order to win that, because women's tennis and men's golf score the same amount of points as football when it comes to the Directors Cup. And I feel that our fan base, our alumni, our university, we've never won that. we've finished second 3 or 4 times, but we've never won it. And being around here a long time, our fan base, our donors, the people that work here, they want to be the best. And we haven't been the best athletic department in the country. And that's what we're shooting for. And we're going to do it. We're going to win it. And, you know, our university has been number one, ranked number one in public universities academically. Our athletics need to be number one too. And, you know, that's our goal moving forward. It's always been a goal, but I think like when you look to do something great, you can't just hope something's going to happen. You have to be intentional about trying to reach a goal or reach your mission. And I think right now, everything we do is to move forward with that goal. And that is continued and sustained excellence across all of our sports.
Well, basketball winning an SEC championship and Jenny Rowland going to the Final Four again only helps those causes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people don't understand about Todd is we've had pockets of success up until Billy Donovan. And Billy, everyone knows, was terrific on what he did at the University of Florida for that program. But I also think the national narrative around that was Billy Donovan, right? If Billy Donovan's not at Florida, you're not winning. And I think what Todd's done and what he's accomplished since he's been here kind of proves that this it's a basketball school too, right? Like we're good and we should be considered with the best basketball teams in the country. And we've actually had our last 4 coaches at Florida that took the team to the Elite Eight. I don't know who else has done that. A lot of teams that went, but they've had continual coaching staffs, right, or head coaches. 3 of those have gone to a Final Four. That's something that we need to celebrate, but we also need to understand that takes a lot of work. It takes resources. It takes the right person leading that program. You know, like this was the first year in the history of our school that we had back-to-back number 1 seeds for the NCAA tournament. Never done that before. You know, you were talking about Jenny Rowland. There is no coach in America that I want at the University of Florida to coach gymnastics more than Jenny Rowland. Like she's going to get that national championship, but the way she goes about working every day and the relationships that she has with that team and what she does for our community, it's incredible. It's incredible what she does. So the problem that I have is that we have so many good ones. I always forget I'm leaving someone out, which I hate. But like it's an incredible stable of head coaches that I feel like from top to bottom right now could be as good as we've ever had at Florida.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on Anthony Nesta yet, too. You know,
yeah.
The one thing I love about this job, and I've said this, you know, publicly before, is that the one thing about being in Florida, and especially with my background and whatnot, there is something really unbelievably cool, and that's probably the worst word I could use because it doesn't say enough. I can go around this campus and pick the mind of experts in their fields wherever I go. And we have this Heavener Center where you go into the dining hall and it's like the old Sports Center promos. You know, oh, there's a championship head coach. Oh, there's an All-American. Oh, there's, by the way, there's a Gator Hall of Famer. And they're all mingling around the same place. And I can't imagine how those resources all don't fuel each other. And maybe you've learned that now that you're touching all these programs as opposed to the individual ones you've had before.
Yeah, you know, Sean, there's an incredible group chat that our head coaches are on together, that they continue to provide support and congratulating each other after a big win. I always feel like there's teams within teams. I feel like administratively, we have a really good team right now of what we're trying to do moving forward with some new ideas, understanding that we're going to have to do things differently. But another team we have is that group of head coaches, and they have to be, in my opinion, they have to be joined at the hip on, Mouse Holloway talks to a lot of our teams, right? Like, he might be the best to ever do it. And our coaches understand that the resources on our campus is as good as anywhere in the country. And they're always constantly bouncing ideas off of each other in recruiting. And I just feel like we're in a really good place right now to make some special things happen. And it always is about the people that are in place.
Did they let you? Did they let you into their group chat when you got?
I am
job?
not in the group. I'm not, no, but a couple of them have kind of showed me some things that I don't want to be in it. First of all, but a few of them have showed me some of the just the positivity of that group chat and what's going on right now. I think it's special. I think it's special. But at the end of the day, you get your team ready to go, and then you got to compete. And I feel good of where that process is right now for our programs of getting to those games and matches and swim meets and golf. Everything. They are preparing the right way. They're working the right way. I feel good about that.
I knew this would take about an hour to tackle all of these things, and sure enough, it's been about an hour. I do want to leave one last piece here for you. This podcast is just obviously it's a conduit, obviously to the fan base. So I do want to end with this in just inviting you to say anything else that you'd like to say directly to all of our Gators out there that perhaps you and I have not covered in our conversation today. And if you feel like we're in a good spot to finish, then you can say that too.
No, Sean, like I think, like I said, I think probably the first thing we talked about that I never felt this way because it just wasn't in my everyday scope of what I was doing professionally at the time. But I have learned and I have seen and I've watched the passion, the excitement for Gator athletics. And again, I think I want our fan base to know that we are working tirelessly every day to bring a product to them that they can be proud of. And we want to be the best. We want to be the best across the board. No ands, if, buts about it, right? We want to win. And I'm at the point and I've understood and I've learned that's what they deserve. That's you, like I, Sean, we've been in a profession, the industry of athletics. So there's a difference. Like, I'm a fan of every one of our sports, but it's my job, right? And you're covering every one of these games and it's your job. So I look at I think when you're in it, you're looking at things a little differently because you're working to obtain something great. And I think there's a difference in how you look at it from a fan and from when you're in working. I have never, ever in my life felt a bigger responsibility to a group of people than I do right now. To bring a product and a winning aura. You talked about it, right? Like, we're the frickin' Gators, and that's why I love these new coaches. Like you'll hear John Summerall say, "We're the frickin' Gators. We're going to win." Well, we're going to win. We are going to win. But understanding that we're not entitled to anything. Like, what we've done the last 30 years has nothing to do with moving forward. Like, we are we've got to understand that there are some things we have to do differently to stay where we want to stay in regards to our competition. And I think we're doing that. I couldn't be happier with where we're at, what we've accomplished, but it's only just beginning.
So there you have it, episode number 60 of the Gator Tales podcast with Sean Kelley. Special thanks, of course, to Duke. I took a lot of his time, but I'm really glad that we had a very important visit. If you'd like to share your thoughts, offer more questions with regard to any of the topics that Duke and I covered, you can always email me at seank@gators.ufl.edu. I'd also like to hear from you if there's a particular guest that we haven't covered in these last 60 or so episodes that perhaps you'd like to hear from. And I've always got my eyes and ears out for something special that comes our way here into the off season for perhaps the next episode of this podcast. We'll have our eyes and ears, of course, on Gators baseball and men's golf. They have remaining postseason work to do. We'll follow that into the month of June. Otherwise, I hope you and yours are doing quite well this time of year, and we'll turn the page into that new athletic year in short order. I'm Sean Kelley. Special thanks again to our presenting sponsor, UF Health, for the continued support and assistance from Kevin Camps and Sullivan Bortner, and to all you Gators out there around the world. We'll see you next time, and as always, go Gators.